A pregnant woman lays mangled in the grass, the contents of her purse strewn around her. Two cars, black and white, in a burning embrace twist together to form new jagged shapes. A man shambles down the road. His face is engulfed in flames and his skin is peeling back to reveal the sizzling flesh underneath. He reaches forward and begs for help.
Jesus Christ, honey, your dreams are fucking insane.
I couldn't hide my reaction. That one was hardcore, even for her. My wife has had very realistic and vivid dreams her entire life. Sometimes they're tame, like an argument with someone she knows, and other times they're ripped straight out of a horror movie. Most of the time she'll look up what they mean, which usually leads to some vague bullshit along the lines of, don't allow conflict in one area of your life to seep into others. Or my personal favorite, you are worried about an unresolved issue. She thinks all dreams have some meaning. I think sometimes a dream is just a dream.
I looked it up, but I didn't find anything about this specific dream.
Yeah, no kidding. Sorry, I gotta go.
You're not working late again, are you?
I'm not sure, but I'll let you know. There's a really important project I'm working on. Should only be a few more weeks at most.
I left for work, taking my usual route. I stopped on the way to pick up Julie for our carpool. She got in and guided the seatbelt gently around her stomach, holding it in place with her hand. I looked at her in silence. I've never been good with words. As I headed toward the highway, a car cut in front of me and slammed the brakes, forcing me to do the same. One look at the car told me everything I needed to know. Young guy, brand new white sports car. Traffic was lighter and faster than usual. Julie rummaged through her purse. The BMW was in front of us, weaving in and out of lanes to get ahead. He weaved one too many times, clipping an 18-wheeler ahead of him, and started swerving. He slammed the brakes to control the car, which was now rolling slowly across the highway. It came directly into my path, and I hit him at nearly full speed. The force of the impact sent seatbelt-less Julie through the windshield, rolling into the grass by the side of the road. Shrapnel punched through the BMW's fuel tank, causing it to catch fire. The driver was trapped inside, unconscious. My door was stuck, and the fire spread quickly into my car. I finally got out, surrounded by flames, and saw my wife in the car behind me. I reached out my hands.
Please help me.
Not a chance in hell, you cheating bastard.
I hobbled into the office on Monday, thankful for the cloth wiping my head and armpits. Earth had gotten warmer over the last few years, but this was something else. If you looked closely enough, you'd swear you saw the asphalt flowing. Nate was there before me. By the looks of it, he never left.
Hey, look, you were right. Solar activity has increased massively and we're detecting elevated levels of helium.
The sun was beating down on us. Hard. Last week, global temperatures spiked overnight. Those of us in the northern hemisphere have it easy, despite seeing heat in December that would be record-breaking in July. Those in the south have been struggling. It gets painfully hot on a good day. Since last week, people have been dropping dead walking to the store for food. And good luck trying to grow anything when the soil is baked like a pie crust. Governments, including ours, have been scrambling to try and figure out a solution. While some departments focused on preventing immediate starvation and death, others like us tried to figure out what the problem was in the first place. You didn't need to be a scientist to realize the sun had grown. It was visibly different. We thought we had billions of years to go before it began dying, but something kicked it into overdrive early. It had begun fusing helium instead of hydrogen, which was a sure sign the process had begun. Nate continued.
That means we have only one option. All the other agencies are on board. We're launching this afternoon.
The brightest minds on the planet combined came to a simple conclusion. The sun was running out of fuel, and we had to fill it back up. Or at least, put enough in the tank to buy us time to save humanity. Things were happening too fast, and the panic was palpable. We would launch as much hydrogen as we could cram into the world's spaceships and retrofit them with experimental engines to get them to the sun within hours. The ships would get close enough to add hydrogen to the surface, theoretically buying us about a century. The crewless ships launched, and the world prayed. Nate and I watched the feed from Mission Control and the numbers from our multitude of sensors. 2 hours later, we looked at each other, hugged, and left. I went home. My son ran to welcome me. I told them I'd be taking them to see the sunset. We drove to Vickers Point, where we had a clear view of the horizon. Diana and I used to walk there all the time. Now we bring Luke along to see the fireworks on holidays. As the sun slowly set, it grew. Wisps of colorful lights danced in the evening sky. I embraced them both, looking at their faces one last time as the temperature quickly rose.
Sarah gasped when she saw the gold-embroidered envelope in her mailbox. An invitation to the mnemonic was a food critic's Oscar, a sign that you made it. Some people framed their invitations, others sold them as collectibles, but nobody had ever declined one, and she wasn't about to start that trend. The head chef greeted each guest at the door, leading them one by one to their respective tables with effortless charm. The first course came with a river of waitstaff, each of their moves meticulously planned to avoid bumping another and losing a plate. Her first bite brought a rush of experiences and emotions. As the rich flavor hit her tongue, she remembered her first time riding a bike downhill. The rush of speed, the thrill of risk, it all came flooding back as she finished the first course. She looked up from her plate for the first time since starting to eat, noticing half an hour had passed. The other guests looked similarly disoriented, having finished their first course at the same time. Waitstaff flowed back in, clearing plates without missing a step and disappearing into the kitchen as quickly as they came. The next several courses were much the same. Exquisite presentation, unbelievable taste, and a rush of memories and emotions with every bite. Sarah and the other guests had been there for hours, yet nobody seemed to notice or care. With every course, Sarah noticed her memories becoming slightly more fragmented, slightly less vivid and complete. Details like faces, locations, and times started to fade. She wondered if it was palate fatigue from so many courses. As she looked around the room, seeing the tired and zombie-like faces of the other guests, she doubted that. After what felt like the 15th course of the meal, the head chef walked out of the kitchen confidently, commanding everyone's attention.
Thank you all for being here tonight and accepting my invitation. I do hope you're enjoying the meal.
Applause rang out across the room. The chef smiled, held up a hand, and continued.
Any notable piece of art requires sacrifice for the creation. The Mona Lisa, Michelangelo's David, the Sistine Chapel, they all took something from their creators. Similarly, tonight's meal has required something from all of you. Each of you had a unique experience, your meal seasoned with your most cherished memories, each bite leaving the memory slightly duller, slightly less clear. The final course is about to arrive. Dear guests, you may choose not to eat it, and you will leave this building with your memories intact, but with no recollection or evidence of your experience tonight. However, if you complete the dish, your memories will be irretrievably lost. The choice is yours.
The chef walked back into the kitchen, replaced by the army of waitstaff bringing out the final course. Sarah looked down at her plate, considering her options. Nobody declined an invitation to the mnemonic, and she wasn't about to start that trend.
I walked up to the funeral home, trailing Dee by a few steps as I fumbled with my suit jacket and cuffs. I asked her to help with the buttons, but she kept walking, trying to compose herself. She fixed a wrinkle in her skirt. We were greeted by 2 employees. I gave them our names, and the shorter one looked us up in the registry. After twisting up her face and giving me a weird look, she eventually found what she needed. She pointed out the bathrooms and led us to the visitation. A glistening closed casket stood alone in the corner of the room, flanked on both sides by a mountain of flowers. The picture frame on top didn't show the deceased, just a set of hydrangeas. Dee loves hydrangeas. It must be tough to enjoy things you like when you're at a funeral. Dee and I were shocked when we heard the diagnosis. Aggressive, rare, fast. Poor woman was gone within weeks. The shock broke her husband. He'd go catatonic for hours and scream every time he remembered she was gone. He would regularly be found walking outside at 3 a.m., enjoying the sunshine. Sometimes he talked into the air. I suppose he needed some coping mechanisms, and detachment from reality was the best he could do. We all react differently. As we paid our respects, I couldn't help looking at the messages on the flower arrangements. I spotted a generic message and whispered to Dee how they could have at least put in a few seconds of effort for final goodbyes. I greeted the sad yet composed family. I wondered whether they had accepted the finality of the situation. I looked around and realized I recognized nearly everyone there. It's remarkable how much friends can overlap, especially in a small community. We exchanged how are yous as we waited. As the visitation drew to a close, everyone shuffled into the chapel for the ceremony. The casket stood prominently, the same hydrangeas adorning the picture frame on top. Dee and I sat at the back and got a few stares from the others, who were spread out through the pews. The front row was empty. People can be so childish sometimes. It was a fairly quick affair, full of prayers for the deceased and forgiveness from a higher power. As the priest went about his business, he motioned for her husband, Paul, to say a few words. Except the poor man's name is Chris. Paul is my name. I looked over to Dee, half chuckling at the mistake. She wasn't there anymore. And the crowd was now looking at me. I looked at the picture of the smiling face above the casket and screamed. Then it was black.
Daddy, what would happen if the moon stopped?
It was the typical innocent question you would expect from a 5-year-old. He asked these kinds of things all the time, but this one echoes through my mind even as their memory slowly fades. I can barely remember their faces, but the pain is there all the same. When it happened, we started noticing the changes right away. The lack of a strong tide meant water receded, leaving bigger beaches behind. People living close to the shore enjoyed that, and it got much less crowded for everyone. When the other changes came, we quickly forgot about going anywhere. Nights became dark, impossibly dark. There was nothing to reflect the sun's rays, plunging the entire world into a merciless black void when it set. You couldn't see your own hands in front of your face. Streetlights were too weak to pierce it, and the most powerful headlights barely got through. Cars couldn't safely travel faster than jogging pace. Society was not built for it, and human activity ground to a halt at night. Without the moon's pull, Earth stopped tilting, plunging the planet into a permanent climate. Seasons became a thing of the past. Where there was summer, there would always be summer. Where there was winter, there would always be winter. Days became shorter, much shorter. The moon slowed down the Earth's spin, and without it, our days went from 24 hours to 12. We had to adjust work, sleep, school, and every other aspect of our lives to the new calendar. Scientifically, we knew those changes were coming, and we could adapt eventually. We had no idea what else was waiting. Parts of the moon naturally landed on Earth after the cataclysm. Some of these pieces contained latent life forms that had laid dormant in the cold vacuum of space. In the life-supporting atmosphere of Earth, they thrived. It helped that they preferred the dark. We never went out then, so we didn't encounter them in the early stages to challenge their dominance. We didn't even know they existed. They and their nests were small then. The short days and consistent temperatures gave them the ideal conditions to thrive wherever they happened to land. They used Earth's quickened cycles to adapt even faster, evolving over multiple generations every calendar year. Their nests and numbers grew. At first, they were a nuisance. Then they became a danger. Now they're an existential threat. By the time we installed lights strong enough to pierce the veil of night, they had become apex predators. People who ventured outside disappeared. Vehicles and their occupants were torn apart without warning. Once they found out where we lived, they came for our homes and built their nests in them. My family, along with many others, was lost. If you're seeing this, you are one of the remaining few. We need to find each other. We need to fight. We need you.